I started 2024 with the grand goal to get into the Final Fantasy franchise and make a video on every single one of the games I play. I ended 2023 with Final Fantasy 16, the newest and shiniest entry to the series, so I decided I'd start 2024 with one of the older titles. This led me to deciding to start my year with Final Fantasy 9. But before we hop into it, I gotta say, me and Final Fantasy 9 have a bit of a weird history. While I was playing through the Final Fantasy 7 Remake, my first Final Fantasy game, I was obviously looking at some of the other entries in the series. And well, to be honest, 9 really stuck out to me. So naturally, when I finished 7, I gave Final Fantasy 9 a try. But in all honesty, I had a really hard time getting into it. I really couldn't tell you why. I got about 10 hours in, nothing had gotten my attention to keep me playing, and I just stopped. That was 7 months ago. So what now could be making me give this game another shot? Well, I have a bit more time now. There's more time to give it a second shot, a real shot. And I do want to believe this is a game that I can really enjoy if I just play it. And well, to be honest, if I don't, I can still make a video on it. It's a win-win for me. So today, I'm going to walk you through my second experience with Final Fantasy 9, the game I'm giving a second shot. Huge spoiler warning, of course, because, well, I'm going to be talking about the whole game as well as my experience. Other than that, please enjoy, let me know what you think, and recommend some of the other great Final Fantasy games I should check out next. Being the first Final Fantasy released for the original PlayStation, 9 marked the ending of a generation. Directed by the great Hiroyuki Ito, who also directed 6 and 12, Final Fantasy 9 would be the first Final Fantasy game of the century, and be the first one mostly developed outside of Japan. You could say there was a lot sitting on this game's shoulders when it released in July 2000. But regardless of the pressure, and to no one's surprise, it was beautifully received and sold well. And now 24 years later, there's me, giving this game a second shot and a fair chance. So let's begin. Let's dive into Final Fantasy 9 and give it the second chance it deserves. As I install the game and I load it up and I start to play through the opening, I remember how beautiful this game is. It's not just the cover, it's not just the trailers. The game itself, despite its age, is so beautiful. Something I feel like I kinda took for granted. I'm playing the PlayStation remaster, so while things are obviously visually upgraded, it's still close to the original release look of the game. That look itself being absolutely beautiful. From when I roam the streets as Vivi to sneaking around the castle, the charm is obvious as the story kicks off. Zidane, our rather plain-looking main character at first glance, is tasked with kidnapping a princess, and when he finally finds that princess, Garnet, she's been looking to escape the castle already. So the story kicks off in a way I could only compare to a fairy tale. A princess kidnapped and a daring escape to start this long quest ahead of me. Zidane, now joined by the shy mage Vivi, the loyal kind knight Steiner, and as well as the hesitant but driven princess, the grand quest of Final Fantasy IX begins for me. As they travel into the world, it starts slow, reminding me quite a lot why it was hard for me to get into it on my first impressions. Characters sure do spark my interest, and sure, mysteries start to grow, but it's hard to talk about much more than that. I'm also quickly reintroduced to the combat, a system I actually quite like. The active time battle system is a great way to make turn-based games feel like there's tension and stakes. When a battle cuts really close and you have to count every second till you can use the item or fire the next spell, it adds a lot more to it. You don't know when the enemy's gonna attack. It's not as simple as just think of the best strategy, plan my turns, and repeat. It's now become, I have no time. What can I do quickly? That's the best possible move. How can I find time to heal? Etc. All while trying to not misclick because now I'm in a rush. That rush though is the best part of it all. The ATB system brings that rush and makes a boss fight or even some normal battles feel way more intense than they would have without it. One change that I love compared to my original playthrough is that since I'm now playing on the PlayStation version, I have a toggleable speed up button. The game's older, there's no denying that, so sometimes running around in between combat can feel very slow. And if I could speed that up just a little bit and cut the time down a little bit, it's nice, it's convenient, and it helps. It honestly doesn't hurt the game at all. It makes it move a little faster at points where I might want to move a little bit faster, especially at these beginning stages where I honestly wasn't enjoying anything all that much. It all moves forward and continues to remind me why I was having trouble with interest the first time. At the beginning, it all moves so slow. Nothing had yet pulled me in, and as the group approaches Bermesia, we do reach the point that I initially had quit at. Gizmaluke, if that's even right? It's on screen. This water serpent dragon thing is an immediate increase in difficulty and seems to mark the first point the game wants you to actually go out and strengthen your team. So think about it. Before, when I'm not into the game at all, and now I've reached a wall that I actually need to put work in to climb over, I quit. Of course I quit. To me, it just didn't seem worth it to put the time in and train. I didn't want to put any effort in at all, so I quit. But I wasn't going to let that happen a second time. I took an hour, did some training, did some basic grinding, grinded up some of the stuff I felt was necessary, and when I came back to the fight, I prevailed. I won the battle. I was finally able to push past whatever it's called, and reach Bermesia. Still though, as I keep saying, I think I was missing anything to really pull me in. Up to this point, it's felt the same as my first playthrough, just a little bit easier. But this is where it all begins to change. Entering Bermesia, the tone changes heavily. We go from just going with the flow, things changing here and there, to it all of a sudden becoming very heavy. And all of that leads to this scene, the first scene to really make me sit up and question the game. This scene is where we see Kuja for the first time. And it's just the feeling this scene gives off that got me. A mysterious figure who's apparently been orchestrating all of these events appears out of nowhere, beautifully and uniquely designed. Then he disappears just as quick as he appeared, in a just as beautiful cutscene. Then the game decides to leave me on a cliffhanger, leaving me in complete mystery of what happened to Zidane, Vivi, and Freya. So what do? Well, I continue playing, more interested than ever. The game now has my full attention and intrigue, so I feel like it takes this opportunity to do something pretty unique. It seems to teach me about the story it wants to tell, telling me that this game wants to follow a very emotional journey through the characters. And this is what gets me. It really starts to feel like a journey I, the player, am actually actively involved in. It starts by showing Steiner and Garnet all alone and allows me to know all of their own details and learn about each of their own issues. Steiner is a proud and very loyal knight, but at the same time, inside, he's very unsure. He wants the best for the princess and at the same time is very loyal to Queen Braun. He himself, though, is very unsure and has a great deal of doubt. But he seems to use his knighthood, something he's very proud of, as an excuse to ignore these doubts. Steiner doesn't follow his own thoughts, and this seems to be his main dilemma: loyalty. While with Garnet, her goal is to figure out what's going on with her mother. She goes on this quest for this reason, and up to this point she's kinda just been following Zidane. But now, she's on her own for the first time, allowing us to understand a bit more about her as she learns about herself. The quest she's on is a great excuse for her to learn more about herself, but us, the player, to learn more about her. Characters are starting to show way more emotion, have way more vulnerabilities, and the mysteries just grow and grow. After the Kuja cutscene, I continued to have a lot better of a time. I just felt like I needed something to pull me in so I could take note of some of the things the game was doing, whether or not it was doing them that well before. I don't want to say it's one of those games that takes a while to get good or whatever. I just like to think that maybe I wasn't trying hard enough to get it, or I just wasn't paying attention. It's ironic that I begin to really enjoy it at this point because it's literally like 30 minutes after I had literally quit the last time. All I had to do was put a bit more time into it. By around the halfway point, so much had changed from the first few opening hours of the game, especially with how I was treating it and how I was playing it. It had really become more than a game I'm giving a second chance to. To me, it had slowly become a game I was falling in love with. And even though I was noticing that, the game just kept going. It kept moving forward faster and faster. The cast is soon and quickly completed with Quina, Aiko, and Armorant, and they all quickly learn, together, the real threat is Kuja. So the rest of the game is the chase after him. While it's obviously not that simple, it evolves and there's a great share of moments. All I can say is that I really did love the rest of the game. Each character has their share of amazing moments that I will obviously talk about, but I want to touch on this scene where Alexandria is beginning to recover from the Kuja attack. I specifically wrote down a note to talk about this because it was one of them light bulb moments, you know, one of those ding on the top of your head in cartoons. Yeah, whatever. In this moment, I went back to thinking about the art style of this game and what could it possibly remind me of. And well, it finally clicked. It reminds me of a storybook, and while I don't have any examples on hand, it very much reminds me of one of those pop-up storybooks. You know, you open it up, it springs up, and while it's still obviously 2D, just like the game, it looks very 3D. And it's also something about the art style. The art style very much reminds me of one of those books. It kind of shares that comforting art style. I don't know if it's something with the colors used, with how they did it, or it's just the artists in general. It's just so beautiful to look at the whole game. The game also features the beautiful 3D cutscenes. Despite them being so old and sometimes a bit weird, I can say they still hold up so well. I can't say what really makes them so pretty for me other than it does remind me of playing games on my old PlayStation. More specifically, I think of the original Spyro the Dragon game. It almost makes me wish we had cutscenes like this now, games that would try and bring back this older style, because, well, it's perfect, regardless if it's old or not. But now, if we skip all the way to the ending, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's that I was almost so angry at this point. I just came from Final Fantasy 16, and no spoilers, but you know how sad that game gets towards the end. Like, there were so many points, I was literally sobbing. So when it felt like I was running along the same track to have that same type of ending, same type of sad ending experience, I was gonna be so upset. 2 games in a row with super sad endings. Then it happens. The happiest cutscene in the game, leaving me with the biggest smile possible, and no tears this time. Thank you. If I was, and I'm going to, talk extensively about one point that makes this game so lovable, it's gotta be the characters. Like most games, the characters can definitely make a game what it is, and Final Fantasy IX definitely exists in that department, but exceeds at the same time. Everybody is so lovable, and at the same time each character explores their own unique themes that we get to actively see them work through. And while it's a fantasy game, nobody faces supernatural or crazy problems. They face realistic issues that real people go through. Watching them struggle and grow through all these experiences, all while being the player, feeling so involved, it leads to it all feeling sincere, lovable, and very special. In all honesty, introductions started slow to me, and at first I did feel like there wasn't too much depth, but quickly, that mask was ripped off. Characters are often introduced to almost be perfect, but within time, each of them broke down, revealing realistic flaws and problems. Flaws and problems that constantly pulled at me because, as I said before, they seem so realistic. They're realistic issues. 9 has a beautiful way of tackling these problems and themes, all while telling this tremendous in scale fairy tale type story. The first character we see is Zidane, our main character. His tale throughout the game is one that stuck out to me for a weird reason. And it's that he doesn't follow much of an arc. Compare him to like Vivi, who goes through so much. He really doesn't until the very end. He's selfless, he wants the best for everyone and works as hard as possible for that very reason, and those qualities seem to be what draws everybody to him. His goal is to eventually find his home, but he doesn't seem that focused on that. His biggest priority is making sure everyone else is okay, and it's a very in-character thing to put them before his goal. He wants to help everyone to their goals before he worries about himself. He's that type of character. All of this culminates towards the ending of the game, where Zidane learns a big truth. He's not from Gaia. He was meant to be this being that brought death to this world he's come to love so much. A character full of such positivity, with his only wish to find his home, finds it. And when he does, he learns this terrible truth. And he breaks down. It's completely understandable. If you think about his position that he's been placed into, I don't even know what I'd do. But with this revelation, Zidane pushes all of his friends away. Everybody he's come to know is not important to him. He thinks he has no choice but to become what he was created for. And as the player, all you want to do is give dude a big hug. You want to tell him it's okay, take a deep breath, and thank God the cast does that for me. They save him, remind him of who he really is and everything he's done for them throughout the whole game. I feel like it's a common moment, but at the same time, it's one that never gets old. The selfless character who's willing to help everyone without a reason breaks down, but everyone he's helped is right there ready to return the favor. Also, the soundtrack that plays during this whole time, it's so good. It's one of those songs that like, you never forget. Vivi, the second character we see and play as, is shy and obviously very self-conscious. He's almost instinctively drawn to Zidane. Like he's sure he needs someone to guide him regardless of his super powerful magic abilities. As he fights alongside the others, he gains experience in the real world as well as continuously grows stronger and stronger. But regardless of this strength, his mind is continuously plagued by questions about existence. The black mage beings that seem almost identical to him are easily influenced and easily misled to commit evil acts. They were created to live for a single year, and once Vivi learns that he may have been some kind of accidental creation, he can't help but think of his existence. Vivi's big quote for this game is, "How do you prove that you exist? Maybe we don't exist." He's stuck pondering his existence and his limited time left. And in the Black Mage Village, this grows to a brand new peak when he's surrounded by beings who are just like him, but at the same time aren't. They don't have no way to understand his dilemma. They don't understand emotions like he does, they don't understand death like he does, and most importantly, they don't understand life. Facing a very heavy issue, Vivi showcases that regardless his small stature and his shyness, he can grow past this and continuously become very strong. Instead of sulking, he makes the big decision to join Zidane and the crew and see the journey through, learning to live instead of spending all of his time thinking about death. And we can really see this growth. There's moments like inside the Leafa tree, where he states he's not upset about his creation anymore. Later, when Kuja uses the mages again, Vivi returns to the village, and this time he learns the remaining villagers stayed behind to help create life. Something that almost completes Vivi. They have grown, meaning that he can too. Meaning that they can do more than they were created for and have greater purposes, regardless of their small lifespan. If they can do it, so can Vivi. Vivi swears to defeat Kuja for using his brothers, for using their lives as puppets, and it's a great full circle moment for him. There's not an ounce of doubt or shyness in his voice. He now has his purpose, and he's grown so strong over this journey. Vivi is a cutesy, small, and adorable character every game seems to have. But yet, ironically, he does have the deepest struggle. A simple idea like death is one that can grow complicated so fast, and Vivi's exploration and journey through that thought is heartbreaking but filled with so much inspiration and determination. In the ending where we learn he's most likely stopped himself, it shows he has created a legacy and has significantly touched everyone, and truly showcases that he's proven he existed. While Vivi is the adorable and heartbreaking character as well as the mascot type of character who's an obvious pick to be a favorite, Garnet actually took that spot for me. She's wrapped into the tale quickly, with a staged kidnapping that is staged but kinda isn't staged at the same time. She joins the group, that's all that matters. Throughout the journey her and the others embark on, she's forced to face what her mother is doing, but at the same time learns a whole new side of life. She's a lot like Vivi, where she's nervous about exploring the world. She doesn't know that much, and because of that, she too almost relies on Zidane, not realizing how much power she holds in her ability to use the Edians, they don't talk in this game. How am I supposed to know how to pronounce stuff? The summons. Garnet hates feeling like everyone is working so hard to protect her, but doesn't know how to break free of that. This changes after she becomes sure of her mother's changes. Garnet finally hits a realization. She wants to be able to be strong. She wants to be able to protect. She wants to learn how to control summons. She knows what she wants to do now, and she couldn't have done that without these experiences she's gained so far. But regardless of her new strength, she's instantly broken down and kicked back down as she lays witness to her mother destroying Lindblom. Garnet is very layered. She struggles heavily with expectations, a lack of confidence, and struggles with her identity at so many points. Her tale is constantly littered with hard moments that should affect her, and they continue to affect her, but she grows stronger and stronger at every moment. Her mother passes after committing atrocities that do nothing but harm to the kingdom. She learns about her real heritage and everything along with that, and now she's expected to rule a kingdom at the same time. She has every possible weight weighing her down, but regardless, Garnet moves forward. It's a simple but powerful message that's honestly needed. It never hurts. If the character can push past all these monstrous, insane, out-of-world issues, why can't you? But this all leads to the scene where she pushes past it all. Her guilt, her sadness, her fear, everything she's accumulated throughout the journey that weighs her down and tugs at her at every moment, she cuts it with the dagger. I love the role this dagger plays, from Zidane giving it to her, almost starting her journey, to it just symbolizing her growth as a whole. It's so good. Garnet easily became my favorite. She is a simple message that's relatable to anyone out there, with a combination of great scenes, and you can't forget her relationship with Zidane. She's such a mashup of things I love just put into one. Also, I'm telling you, if you just shove a cute romance plot in my face that makes sense, I will love it, and it will make me love the characters. It's that simple. I don't know. I love romance. Following Garnet to find his way into the main cast, Steiner doesn't follow as heavy of a theme as the others. He definitely follows Quina in the ways of being there a lot for laughs, but there is some actual depth to his journey. As I said before, Steiner is a proud and loyal knight. Regardless what he sees Queen Braun up to, he doesn't accept it. Even when the princess is almost killed because of Braun, the princess he holds so dear, the princess he swears to follow to the end of the world, protect with his life, is almost killed, he still can't believe it. He holds on to the idea she hasn't done anything wrong. He puts his loyalty over his own thoughts of right and wrong no matter what, and nothing can seem to change that. But when they begin the escape with Garnet, even Beatrix, someone he holds in the highest regard, has turned her back on the queen, and Steiner really starts to wonder if he is doing the right thing by not joining her in this betrayal. When he comes to the answer, it's of course not. Duh, Steiner, like, come on bro, finally, it took you the longest out of everyone. He finally forsakes that loyalty and fights for a cause he himself actually believes in. Steiner finally realizes he can be loyal as he wants, but he can be loyal to what he believes in, and that's Princess Garnet. Also, his developing relationship with Beatrix is so silly. They're like complete opposites almost, but they're so similar. And being someone who loves romance plots, as I said before, of course I loved it. After Steiner, the rest of the cast fall into place, each finding their own unique ways to join the team. Starting with Aiko, she seems to strongly showcase the tides of growing up and family as a whole. She's a very strong kid. We can all admit that, there's no denying it. After all, she's had to grow up all on her own, and she's had to teach herself everything, all while dealing with pressure from her legacy. She's got a lot going on for someone so young. Upon meeting her, she tries to keep this cool front that she can do it all, regardless if at the end of the day she's a little kid, even going as far to try and cook a whole meal for everyone. As we go through the game with Aiko, she really starts to see everyone as a family. Eventually, she seems to become disinterested in the idea of loving Zidane, instead slowly realizing it was a front to wanting to belong to somewhere. She treats Vivi like a little brother and Garnet like a big sister, and even by the end of the game calls Sid and Hilda her parents. Aiko is just a poor girl who was looking for a family and ended up finding it in this unique cast of characters. And to be honest, this should have been obvious from the second she tried to sit down and have a big family meal with everybody, but still. I loved her through the game. She was a great character who at so many tense moments was able to just break the ice and just make everybody in the cast feel a little bit better. The biggest example of this that I can think of off the top of my head is probably in the Black Mage Village, where Vivi seems to be having a big moment and everybody else doesn't really know what to think or say to him. And she's just there kind of being like, it's okay. I love it. As for Quina, well, they're Quina. Quina loves to eat, and traveling the world with the cast has allowed them to learn so much about the world. Quina is there for the laughs, there's no doubt about that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think Quina is a perfect fit into this serious emotional journey, even if they don't follow that type of quest themselves. They don't need to. Someone who breaks the ice and has these funny moments constantly and who you can rely on to keep that coming, it's a perfect break from all the seriousness you're expecting the game to have. And that in turn makes it so that the second Quina pops onto the screen, you know you're gonna get a little break and you kinda get excited when you see them pop up. It's always gonna be something that makes you feel a little bit better. And those are just some examples of the characters I love. I could honestly talk about probably every member of the cast in detail like that, but I really want to just mention a couple more. I want to talk about one character in specific that I was seriously disappointed in, and so we finally reach Freya. Freya is a character that interested me from the jump. A strong dragon with a beautiful design that screams fierce and serious, but something somber at the same time. She yearns to learn more about a missing lover that disappeared years ago, one thought to be dead. This drive seems to keep her stuck in a somber place, one in the past. She's constantly thinking about him and constantly reminded about him. And when he randomly reappears during a battle with no memories, it's obviously gonna be a huge character moment. Her lover has forgotten everything. She's been absorbed in thoughts of his death and is finally rewarded with his return for it to mean almost nothing. I think this ends up being Freya's biggest character moment, as it's just incredibly tragic to sit and think about this. Your lover disappears and they come back out of nowhere, but they know nothing about you. Someone you've been stuck on for years. It's tragic. Even though in the end they do end up together again, his memories are still lost. As the player, it's super bittersweet. It's nice to see, but Freya at the same time was one of the least explored characters throughout the game. The reunion feels like it kind of just happens. We don't know how they got back together, we don't know how they got to this point, and the only hint we get made me feel like Freya is still stuck in that same place they were at the beginning. I wish we were given more with Freya, because Freya's a character that right off the bat I liked. And as a serious romance enjoyer, I wanted to see this issue get resolved. This is one of the ones I was most excited to see resolved. And it's upsetting because it seems like there's so much that could have been done with them. Don't get me wrong, all the characters are phenomenal in their own ways. I said that earlier. It's just that Freya found her way to being my least favorite because of my disappointment with how she was just handled. Least favorite in this game though is still quite high in comparison to other games because, well, I feel like a lot of games don't handle their characters like this. Everyone in this game is so unique. I feel like I've said this so many times, but not one character ends up feeling like they were an extra or they were just put there because they needed someone there. The whole cast is so well taken care of, and moments are specifically made so that you feel like you bond with every single one of them. There's so much cool things, like being able to learn Garnet's true name and reading the message from her parent. Then there's like the active time events, which just give you little moments with every character. Moments that honestly aren't needed, but they felt like they wanted to give them to us. It's really nice. I'm happy we got it. And it's not even only the good guys to say. The antagonists are really, really good too. I love both Garland and Kuja because of how much each of them made me think. There's Necron, but I feel like I can't really say too much about him. He's revealed right at the end for a second, and I feel like in order to get like a scope of his message and what he's meant to mean, I'd probably need to do a replay. So I don't think it's very fair for me to speak on him. Regardless, I do think 9 has definitely had my favorite set of antagonists so far. I don't know how serious I can say that, considering I've only played this and 16 to completion. I haven't even played all of Final Fantasy VII yet, so take that with a grain of salt. They're just my favorite so far. If we start with Garland, he is so interesting. Being a creation to keep Terra's life cycle ongoing, he works to do just that. He acts as an overarching, even more mysterious threat than Kuja. And he's one that seems to have all the answers, and when we finally reach him, he tells us everything we need to know. I think the most interesting thing about him is this speech. This speech about death is just so interesting to think about. It really makes you think about him and his motives. Morally, his actions are terrible. He deems another planet to death so that his planet can survive. But you really gotta think, because of his speech, what point does these morals matter? It's a natural cycle he's working to continue for the survival of his people. In his words, life must cause death to survive, and he's fulfilling just that. Garland does everything in this game for a reason that's impossible to determine whether it's right or wrong. Because how can you prove fighting for survival is wrong? All of our cast is doing the same. Are they wrong for dooming Terra to save Gaia? It's an impossible conflict. It's a conflict that he causes us, the player, to think so much about. And in the end, it can only lead to one thing: a battle for survival. Giving us, the player, a perfect reason to go against Garland, and it feels like he has a perfectly good reason to go against me. He's so well crafted for that reason. I feel like it's perfect when I understand his motives, and I can understand why I have to fight him, but why he's fighting back. It's not a good versus evil type of situation. It's just not defeat this super strong evil bad guy. It's just both sides are fighting for their worlds to survive. I find myself, even if I try and break down his reasoning, like the way he went about doing this grand goal to fulfill his world is so evil, it's so terrible. Even if I try and break it down and I try and understand it and try and be like, maybe he was doing too much, I still can't find the answer to my question. You can't prove what he's doing is necessarily all wrong. And I think that's what makes him so good to me. Kuja, his son, well, would it be son or creation? Either way, he is the main antagonist. While Garland lurks in the shadows, Kuja's the one provoking the player the whole game, constantly showing up on the screen, and the one we see do the most heinous evil acts. He is also just like Garland for me in the way that I found him super interesting. Created by Garland to be a puppet of destruction, he, in a way, was viewed as a failure by him. Therefore, Zidane was created. Zidane's creation led Kuja to jealousy. Enraged by the feeling of being replaced, he sent Zidane to Gaia, and therefore he was banished to Gaia himself. As you begin to explore Kuja, you learn a lot about him, and it becomes pretty obvious that at the end of the day, Kuja acts like a child. He really is just a child. Kuja's parent, Garland, disregarded him as a broken tool and created a better version of him, one that was meant to replace him in every way. And just as a kid does, he acts out of jealousy. It starts with him sending Zidane to Gaia. And because of this, Zidane becomes everything that he himself is missing. Everything Garland wasn't going to let him experience. And seeing this, he feels the jealousy he had at the beginning. He takes every chance he can get to bring Zidane down. But every time, Zidane prevails. Because of this, anger builds up in Kuja more and more. And it hits a breaking point when he learns that his life is limited, but Zidane's isn't. As a kid would, he begins to throw a fit. This fit causing the destruction of Terra, and him looking for one more opportunity to break Zidane. With limited time left, he fights Zidane in the group again, and well, he obviously loses. And as he lays there, ready to die, Zidane comes to his side. And in this final act of brotherly love, he learns something. On his deathbed, he proves that you can change and you can grow regardless of what circumstances you were placed into, which I feel like is a great message to send the big antagonist off with. Kuja is the result of circumstances. Never did he have the same chance as Zidane to learn and to quote-unquote become human. The only person he's ever really known, his parent, Garland, treated him as a weapon, as a means of destruction, but Zidane treated him as a sibling, as another person, and through that experience, Kuja was able to grow beyond his origins. Kuja is a tragic antagonist in the way that none of his acts are excusable. None of them. But he never really knew better. The reason I say he was like a child is because he is. He was never able to understand that the ways he's trying to get back at what wronged him is incorrect. And considering his circumstances, growing up under Garland, who only raised him to be destructive, who never taught him about any other parts of life, it's understandable. I find it so interesting when you're able to break down an antagonist and figure out why it almost all ends up feeling correct. You're able to understand them, and you might not be able to justify what they did, you can at least understand it. To be honest, I could probably make a huge video on both of them. Both of them had so many great moments, and both of them were so interesting, and the way they connect to the rest of the cast so you can compare them to so many of the other characters is great. But I'm happy with what I've said here, and I think it's about time we get out of here. Final Fantasy IX is the third Final Fantasy to make me regret not playing it earlier, and I'm sure it won't be the last. Being a game I'm trying just now for the second time, well, I don't need to go over all of it again. I loved it so much, and it's probably, to be honest, became my favorite Final Fantasy. I feel like the fact that I came back and gave this game a whole second chance adds a lot to it for me. It's not only just a game I loved and was absolutely impressed with, it's a game I gave a second chance to, and that's a big part of me remembering it. Me and this game have a unique story that's between me and it, and every time I go back and play it or think about it in the future, I'm gonna be reminded of that. And I think that's part of the charm of my playthrough. And that's pretty much all I want to say. I've been here for a while and this video is already longer than I even wanted it to be. Y'all know what I enjoyed and what I love so much, so let's just get out of here. Thank you guys for watching, show the same support you always do, and I will see y'all soon.